it's a pleasure to have you guys join us. I know some of you have been to the live meetups, and now this is something relatively new that we're doing, and we're reaching a lot of people across the country. I will be, unfortunately today, I actually have a second meeting that I have to go to, but Donna's going to be here, and she will be the the host. She's the co-host, and she's going to take care of everything. And I'll turn it over to Donna. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Tom. Hey, everybody. Welcome. I'm just a mere proxy standing in for Tom this evening, and happy to be with you and see some familiar names and almost faces. But my pleasure to welcome you to the reboot of Kamwo's Meetup in a virtual format, and to introduce you formally to someone some of you may already know, Dr. Maureen Larkin, who's a colleague, and I'm happy to see her this evening.
I'm happy to see everyone.
Anyone else, but I'd like to just read a little bit about her bio. She's the owner and founder of Sundance Traditional Chinese Medicine in New York City, licensed acupuncture New York State, NCCOM certified, and an adjunct professor at the Pacific College of Health and Science, formerly known as PCOM. Maureen holds a doctorate in acupuncture and Chinese medicine from PCOM in San Diego and a MSTOM from PCOM New York. So certification in advanced constitutional facial acupuncture, and is the co-author of clinical application of Ru Yi Jin Huang San to treat dermatological cases. Certified in Sandin technique, a system of energy balancing body work in the Cherokee tradition. Maureen is not here to talk to us directly about any of those fantastic things, but to provide us with some information about EMR, electronic medical records. And she's honed her expertise and offers her findings in classes at Pacific in this subject, and is here to share her expertise with us this evening. So thank you all, and warm welcome to Maureen.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you, Tom, and the Kamwo community for hosting these meetups tonight and throughout the years, and it has been fun. I'm one of the people that like to attend the in-person meetups, and while I think we all share a little Zoom fatigue, I'm really happy that we can expand this and have more people join from across the country, and spend another evening in Zoom land talking about EMR. So what I'm going to do tonight, I don't think anyone's going to come away saying this is the product I have to use, but instead I want to talk a little bit about the need for EMR or not, some of the features that are common across many, and a little bit about some of the top ones and where I think some excel, and also just what you should consider, what's right for you, and as you get started, what might make it easier. I myself waited a long time to jump into this pool, and while I was waiting, my professional background before acupuncture included product development in software companies. And we were a big company that would buy little companies over time. So that's going to factor into why I waited so long. And I don't want to steal my own thunder, but we'll talk about that. So I want to talk about the features and help you to begin to organize which of these features are most important to you. And when you're ready to get started, what's the easiest way to go about that? Yeah. So Joey, if you could advance the slide, please.
Yeah, so let me just mention to everybody, we're working sort of as a multi-headed system here. Joey Lau is helping us with the technological slides, so you'll hear Maureen advancing slides through him. She's got a great presentation here. We're going to go through that, and any questions that pop up, maybe you can post them in the chat. We'll curate them, and Maureen's certainly going to leave some time, at the end for like an open discussion. Turn the slides off and just be able to sort of see each other face to face and address any questions that you might have. So hopefully that helps you.
Thank you for that, Donna. Yeah, if you would just use the chat. Donna, if you feel like you should interject a question in the middle, feel free. If you want to hold them till the end, might be more fun to talk as we go. So that's in your capable hands, and thank you for doing it. Joey, thanks for running the slides for us. Takes a village, right? Okay, so just as we get started, we talk about electronic health records, we talk about electronic medical records, and you know, for a while I looked at the two and thought they were interchangeable, and realized in the biomedical community and in the insurance world, they have very, very different meanings, and they're related to each other. So I thought it's worth, let's be clear about what we're talking about when we say this. So electronic medical records, EMR, that's what we're talking about with the products we're looking at tonight. It's a digital equivalent of your chart. It's doing the patient's charting and keeping it all together, versus electronic health records, which is more encompassing, right? If you have an electronic health record, your electronic medical record, your chart is part of that. But I see it as kind of, it's like a repository where, you know, your physician will put your office visit, and your imaging lab will put your films in there, and, you know, the specialist, the gastroenterologist, will also put their report in there. So it's a collection of EMRs from multiple places, as well as lab reports and pharmaceutical information, etc. It's your comprehensive statement of your health. Does that make sense, I hope, to everyone? Just a little bit, I think it's good to put the definitions on the page. So for me, with the products we're looking at, I consider them to be EMRs, medical records. Even though they go a little bit beyond charting, they are certainly not a repository for multiple practitioners to coordinate. And looking forward, I think, Joey, could we have the next slide, please? Okay. When the Affordable Care Act and the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act both passed, it became a requirement for biomedical practitioners to begin using electronic medical records, with an eye toward the fact that we would drive toward EHR, where, for the benefit of the patient, no matter where you went in your healthcare, amongst your healthcare team, that practitioner would be able to access everything about your health. And the intent was to be more comprehensive, and to, in the positive sense, and in the negative sense, to not have conflicting treatments happening at the same time. So that happened, that passed in January 2014. You may remember, if any of you went to a doctor's office at about that time, there were a lot of cranky people in doctor's offices. And they were cranky because they were having to manually type in all of their patient records so that they could be embedded in these EMRs. Now, that is not a requirement for us as acupuncturists right now. But as you know, we're lobbying, our state and national associations are lobbying to have us become Medicaid providers. And as we get closer to that, I expect that this will become, once we become Medicaid providers, I think this may follow on the heels of that. So for people who might have been sort of holding off on this decision, that may be a reason to consider moving forward at this point in time. Okay, Joey, next slide, please. So what are we going to talk about? A little bit of vocabulary, which we've already done. In general, the basics of reviewing software. There are some things you want to find out about any software product that you're buying. And so the very basics are things that I'd like us to be familiar with. I think it's beneficial. The pros and cons of EMR, which is sort of an explanation for why I waited as long as I did to join this. There's a lot of upside, and there's a little bit of downside too in getting started here. So let's talk about what they are, and then address them step by step, and see how each one is going to benefit you most, and for the cons, if they're worth overcoming for you right now. So there are some major features that most of these products offer, and they're common across all of them. How they do them varies a little bit, maybe. How they charge for them might vary a little bit. Those include things like running your charts, right? Charts, are they going to be customizable? Including your patient intake, including your health history that you're going to send out to your patients. When you're doing charts, a lot of these products have functionality that you might not even have thought about having available to you. Things like, you know, if there are phrases that you use all the time, if you want to say lower back pain and type in LBP, you can set up your macro within most of these systems to type in 3 letters and have the phrase populate. And use that on an even larger sense, where if you do a lot of orthopedic work and there's a particular definition that you want to put in your patient portal, you can type one word and have the entire thing populate for you. It's a very, very nice time saver. Most of these will allow you to save treatment protocols. So I'll use low back pain again as an example, which is maybe not tactile, but it will make the point. So if you have a certain point prescription that you use for 99% of your low back pain patients, you can name it low back pain. And when you type that in, you can have your point prescription automatically populate for you. So in terms of charting, those are some of the things you look at. With all of these, we're going to be looking as we move forward at what's the ease of doing these things, and how robust are they? You know, how many bells and whistles do you really need versus do you really want? Keeping in mind that statistically, we use 20% of the functionality in any software product that we are using. So that might be Word or Excel, or in this case, your EMR. So what's your 20%? What is important for you to do? So more features that will be available have to do with insurance billing. So insurance billing will look at things like CPT codes, ICD codes, time increments. How do you organize your chart so that when your insurance providers, when your healthcare insurance companies ask to see your notes and your charts, that they are organized in a way that's going to make sure you get your payment. You also want to have the ability, most of these have the ability to manage your patients. You will input and then keep track of all of your patients' care, including the treatment for today, the intake, the diagnosis, the treatment itself, anything you prescribe for them. So one of these has the ability to populate all of the herbal formula building tools that some of us use on a day-to-day basis, and I find that to be really, really helpful. And maybe you will too, we'll find out. Inventory management. So by that, I mean, a lot of us stock product in our office. And if we could have a system to track that for us for aging purposes and for income purposes, that's helpful to some of us. We're going to talk about the pricing, and the pricing here is not really apples to apples. You know, the price itself might be higher or lower for one system versus the other, but then you want to consider the add-ons. And so we'll look a little bit about that. I've done my best to paste into our slides pricing for 3 or 4 of the top products that I'm aware of, and you'll see that it's comparing apples to apples and building side-by-side spreadsheets is not as easy as one might think. And then we'll talk about, and I'll ask you guys to think about, and maybe you'll have questions for me about, how do you figure out which one is right for you? Is it going to, in my opinion, when you make a change in your practice, you want to do it because either it's going to save you time or it's going to bring in more money. And if it isn't going to do either one of those two, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to bring it in, does it? I mean, why invest the time, your learning curve, in doing this if there's no upside for you? We want to consider communication, right? We all struggle with, your patient wants to text you, they want your personal email, they want to talk to you through Facebook Messenger or Instagram, and it's a HIPAA nightmare. So we'll consider whether these will provide us with a communication method that would be encrypted and safer. And then again, we'll talk about pricing and do my best to talk about one versus the other, bearing in mind that as I've done this over the years, and one of the things I do at Pacific College is to teach a practice management course, and we review 5 or 6 of these programs each term. And they change over time as technology changes, as practitioners' needs change, and as these companies are more or less responsive to us, we'll see that the products change. And so I'll do my best to keep you up to date with that which I know about these, with the caveat that these things could change any day, or what I'm talking about, there may have been an update since the last couple of weeks when I looked at any of these. So I'll just pause for a minute if I can and see if there's any questions, anything that jumps out at anybody that, gee, I hope you cover this, or is it possible to cover that? Anything you want to put on the table, anyone? Okay.
I'll just put a message in from our sponsors and just ask if you can, in the chat, if you haven't already done so, type in your name and your email address. This is how Kamwo will send you the coupon for your attendance. We've been finding if we send it directly through Meetup, sometimes it just gets caught in spam, and we just can get it to you this way directly. Thank you.
Thanks, Donna. Okay, Joey, could we have this next slide, please? So just a little word cloud here to think about some of the things that will be important to us. And really the question that I'm hoping that I help you to work through is which one of these is right for my practice, and which features, maybe more importantly than which product when we come away from this, which features are more important for you to have in your practice. And then we can back into, okay, which products do the best job of handling those particular features. Next slide, Joey, please. Besides creating that word cloud is fun if you haven't ever done it. All right, so the basics of reviewing software. So it applies to these products, but it also applies to any software product that you're going to be looking to buy. So it has applicability across EMRs and any new program you're considering for your office. So the first thing I think about is scalability and range. Scalability means, the word itself means making things bigger and smaller, right? And that's what we're talking about here. When I'm looking at a software product, I want to know how much can it handle, or how little can it handle. If I am a little fish in a big pond, is it right for me, or is it too much for me? So scalability in terms of these products, can I add and subtract patient records? Can I add and subtract locations? Maybe I work in more than one office. Can I add and subtract practitioners if I'm hiring or hiring practitioners, or some are leaving? How does that all get handled? The answer to that for these is oftentimes yes, you can, and there's great range, but that sometimes comes with a price, so we'll consider that. So range simply means within that scalability, are there any limits? How many or how few, right? And that's the part that might be tied to cost. You can add new practitioners, but there's a cost per practitioner, for instance. Same with admins. Sometimes you need an administrative account so that your receptionist can do scheduling and your biller can do billing, but they don't really need access to the charts, and those generally are priced differently. So portability and formats. Portability, as the word implies, means moving to and from. So if I am starting out, this is my first time using an electronic medical records program, I need to input data there unless I have my patients in some kind of spreadsheet. But if I'm moving from one system to another, I want to know that I can get my data out of the system. I want to know what format I'm going to get it in. And then I want to know what format can that system accept once I have my data. And I want to input it to my new system. What formats can that new system accept? All of these companies will tell you we can take anything. We can give you anything. We can give you all your information. The critical question is, what format are you going to give it to me in? And how usable is that by the place that I'm going to? So portability and formats. Hardware. By hardware, I simply mean what devices, what gadgets can you use this software on? Some of these products were built with one particular type of a device in mind, and they work best typically. Software works best in the environment that it was developed for. Over the years, what will happen is people will love the software, but hey, I don't work in a Mac world. And so the developers will go back and say, well, let's try to retrofit it for you. And many times they do their very best to do it, and oftentimes it just doesn't work as well on the retrofitted system, at hardware rather, as it did on the one it was developed for. So a question I like to ask is, what was it developed for initially? And how does it work what's it working on right now? Another thing is the generation of your gadgetry, if you will. You might say, oh, great, it works. best on a tablet. I have an iPad, and then you sign up for your EHR and start trying to use it, and you realize your iPad is from 2017, and you need a newer generation. So look at the generation that you need in terms of hardware too. In times of hosting and security, this is a security issue, clearly, right? So you want to know who hosts your data. Some of these days are hosted in the cloud, so they're hosted virtually, but there oftentimes is an on-ground server that's somewhere. And sometimes the companies won't tell you this for security reasons. But typically you want to know that it's hosted in at least 2 places, and you prefer that those places are off the beaten track, right? So that they're not an area that is at high risk of being damaged by natural or man-made disasters. And the reason you want more than one is if one server is damaged by natural or man-made disasters, that the other can kick in so you have no downtime and you don't lose any of your records. This was, for those of you who were in and around New York or working in the financial industry after September 11th, 2001, we talked about security and hosting a lot before that, but it got really tactile at that point in time. And you may remember that many companies just shut down and stopped doing business because their systems were not accessible at all for a bit because the server room in the office got blown up. So you want to make sure that that doesn't happen to you. And then security. Is the data encrypted, and how is it encrypted? So security, typically, just as a matter of course, in the United States, it's 256-bit encryption that you'll talk about. And that's the standard that you want to see. Developers will tell you it's not high enough, but it is business-wise in this country what people aim for. With all of these topics, you want to talk to the company you're interested in or companies that you're weighing against each other and ask these questions and see which one you're more comfortable with. Your license is important in protecting the security of your patient records. And so you want to make sure that you feel confident in what's being done with any product you're going to put your patient's health information into. And then pricing seems to be all important, but really so much feeds into how are these prices established. So all of these have monthly pricing. Some of these will have a discount if you pay up front for the year. Some of them have other pricing options to pay quarterly, etc. I will reference often integration versus included. There's a lot of features that these products have that are where they'll say, oh, this is integrated with Constant Contact, so you can do complete email campaigns through this. And that would be true, providing you also have a subscription to Constant Contact. So that's what I mean by integration. You need to own those 2 separate products, as opposed to included means to me that it's part of the EMR and you don't have any additional costs. And then you want to just ask, are there any other upfront costs? Some software companies will provide a certain number of hours of training and then have a fee for training beyond that basic number of hours. So you just want to be clear about these things. And again, these are general concerns for software. There are also some guidelines about the uptime and downtime for any software. So if you, none of these products have a high percentage of downtime that I'm aware of. Joey, can we have the next slide, please? Okay, so why did I wait so long, and why would I bother to start doing this now? I graduated from Pacific College in 2002. There was, I believe, one EMR around at the time. It was Mind Body Online, and it was okay, but not great. And it wasn't really made for acupuncture, but they were retrofitting it to try to have a new marketplace. And over the years, there have been plenty. There's a good amount of choices out there now. So some of the pros and cons, the why should I do it now? Well, if you're an existing practitioner, you have a system that works. I can remember a practitioner I knew years back who would do his charting in Google Docs, which is nowhere near HIPAA compliant, but it worked. And he was never hacked. So that's one way to do it. Some of us are still handwriting on paper, and that also works, providing you have a locked-in fireproof file cabinet for everything and enough space to store 6 or 7 years of records. When you think about converting to electronic charting to an EMR, it's kind of a headache. You need to take time and money to make this happen. You have a large learning curve to figure out how to use this. I know how to sit with my paper and write whatever the patient's saying in whatever order they say it. When I look at a screen, I have to find the right window to put things in. So maybe this intake process that took me half an hour yesterday, when I'm learning the new software, might take me, 40 minutes because I need a little extra time. I would say regarding that learning curve, my advice is let your patients know I'm switching, I'm entering the 21st century. I'm using this new software product, and bear with me just a little bit. And I'd say bar none, in my experience, are very open to that. They will laugh and tell you about some new software they're trying to get used to at the same time. So I would not be afraid to simply say that up front, and let the patient know, and also talk to them about whatever benefits they might be experiencing as a consequence of your taking on this new product. The stability of existing providers. That's one that sort of scared me for a long time. I referenced a little while ago the fact that I worked for fairly large companies, and we, over the years, converted lots of our products from print. We had CD-ROMs for a while. We converted all of that to web delivery. We were a large company, and we made a habit when we wanted to add a new product to our offering, we would have a buy versus build. We called it a buy versus build discussion. And the buy option would mean that we were going to find a small company that already did what we were interested in having and had an established client base, and we would buy that company. And I can tell you that close to 100% of the time, when this small company got brought into the big company, the customers of the small company lost some of the services that they were accustomed to. Smaller companies are quick and nimble. Large companies are slow and clunky, in my experience. And so I had a fear that if I started doing my charting electronically, that one of the larger, more established biomedical companies might come in and buy up a smaller acupuncture focused EMR company and try to embed them into their system, and that I would lose some of the things that I really liked about my existing EMR. And so I resisted that for a long time. So some of the pros: no more paper, no more paper, no more fireproof cabinets that are locked, no more cleaning out charts at the end of, at the beginning or end of each year to get rid of the ones that are now 7 or 8 years old, depending on your state. The charting is easier once you get accustomed to where it is. You can type it in. And there's a lot of integrated resources that we're going to talk about one by one as we go through these features. Joey, can we have the next slide, please? So the major features that we're going to see overall, there'll be online scheduling, and we're going to look at each one of these piece by piece. So you want the ability for your patients to be able to schedule, you want to be able to schedule patients, and you want to be able, as technology changes or as you spread yourself out across your laptop, your watch, your phone, your tablet, which of these can I use or do I care to use my EMR with? So when you look at the charting for some of these is set up already. Some of them has you select and build or use from a, I'm sorry, I had the chat box popped up and I got distracted. They have existing forms that you can use and then you can customize within them, or you have a community repository of forms that you can go and pick your best from. We talked about the shortcuts and phrasing and macros a little bit. So if there are, this is where you can save time, right? If I have one particular protocol or one that I use frequently, I can save my point prescriptions that way. Or if I have phrases that I repeat, or say definitions, like if I have a paragraph about how to, a couple of exercises to do to heal or protect from low back pain, I can type in one phrase, protect low back pain, and have that entire exercise populate into the patient's portal. Now, if I'm having insurance billing, I want insurance billing assistance. Maybe I'm going to look at this and say, you know what? I'm going to take on my billing myself. I can it gives me the ICD codes. It will populate my my needle insertion in timed increments. It's integrated with a particular insurance clearinghouse. Maybe I'm going to take it on myself. Or maybe you think the value of my biller is that they know who's going to pay for what, and I want to continue using my biller. In which case you want to know, can you get an account for your biller to use? And if you can, at what cost? Of course you can, right? You can get anything for the right fee. You want to know whether there's a patient and payment management system. Can you keep track of a patient's account, what you've billed them and what they've paid you? Can you accept patient payments through your EHR? And then we talked about the inventory, those items that you might stock inside of your office. Can you help to manage that inventory by keeping track, entering what you purchase for the office when you do, and then having it automatically subtracted as you sell or use those products. So those are your features. But I think the hurdle for a lot of people is first you have to set these things up. They don't magically appear exactly the way you want them to. And so, Joey, can we have the next slide, please? Thank you. So setting up your clinic, you want to create a profile for each practitioner. Think about yourself when you look online at a new practice of any kind, right? So you'll look at the practitioner's bios, and maybe you'll decide if you like them by what they're wearing or what they look like, in addition to what their credentials are. So you can look at these and decide for each practitioner, can you have their picture if you want to? Do you have room to put their bio in? If you have multiple locations, can you list their locations and do scheduling for them at their different locations? Can you also schedule for them during their shifts only? So maybe I have, one employee that only comes in on Wednesdays and another that's there 5 days a week. Can I allow scheduling? Can a patient schedule with who they want to, when they want to? And can I do the same for my patients? We need to talk about the services that we offer. We want to let our patients know a very clear picture of here's what I do at my office. And so you want to be able, when they select, when you sign into online scheduling, you'll see services offered. They'll tell you how long it will take for them, how they'll give you a description for them. They might tell you the locations they're offered at. All of this needs to be created for you and for your clinic, right? The ability to have that in a system exists for most of these. The question becomes, how easy is it for you to go in and populate that in a way that it's clear on the patient's end when they're viewing it, and easy for you to update when you want to. One of the big ones is to enter or import your patients and their history. I say remember HIPAA here for this reason. Sometimes practitioners will say, well, maybe I'll hire a student intern to do this. If they're not your employee, because of HIPAA, they can't look at your patient charts. They can't see your patient's information and type it in for you. So some of these companies will offer assistance in doing that, and you'll have an agreement that has to be signed and is agreeable under HIPAA. Other of these, and one of the things I like in particular about one of them is that they already have some of your patient's data and will bring it in for you, which was a big part of my decision. Some of them will link to directories if they have directories available, which is another way to help patients find you when they're doing their web searching. Some of them, a very few of them, will allow your color scheme, your branding that you've already created for your website and for your marketing materials to be included in the screens within the EMR. Usually, and think about this yourself, you might have noticed this yourself, if you're using a scheduling system, it might be a medical one, it might be a yoga class, who knows. When you click on the book now, I want to register for a class, if you look at the URL, typically it changes. Because you're moving over, you're actually putting your information in a schedule within the scheduling software, not within the practitioner's website. And so the URL will change. In some of these, you will actually be able to have the URLs continue to display your practice's name. In most of them, it's going to change. So if you're going over to book in the Jane app, in the Unified Practice, it's going to change to Unified Practice. Most of these will provide you with a link or a widget, so you can have a little book now button on your website or on within your social media. And how do you add that? What's the ease or difficulty? Do I need a software developer to do it? Can I just paste a link? And lastly, you know, many of these have inventory management systems. Well, how do you set that up? You have to, you know, take what you have on hand and enter it in. And every time you get a new shipment, you have to enter it in. So how easy or difficult is it to do that? And what kind of reporting will you get out of that? Joey, next slide, please. Okay. So we're going to go through each of those one by one. And the first one we're going to talk about is scheduling. And the images you see on the bottom are taken from some of the, I chose 4 systems that I know have been around for a couple of years that are pretty widely used. And those are the Jane app, Unified Practice, AccuSimple, and TCM Suite. And for full disclosure, TCM Suite is a product that's been developed by Kamwo. And we'll talk more about why and how that came to be as we get to look at each of these individually. So in terms of scheduling, you want to make sure there's an online widget. For most of them, it's similar to a URL that you paste in as web development has gotten more simple. You want to look at how that happens and what that appears like on your page. For instance, if you want it to change color, can you make it change color? Any of these, as you're using them, you want to sign in as yourself, as the practitioner, and then you want to test it before you buy it. You want to go in as a patient and try to schedule an appointment and see what it's like, see what the user experience is like. I can tell you that when you review these, some of these products will give you access to the product and you can have a trial and play around with it for a couple of weeks. Some of them will say, oh, I'll take you through a demo. I'm always cautious about those demos. I used to write those demos in my previous life, and we were very careful to highlight our strong suits and downplay anything that we knew to be a weakness. And people who are unfamiliar with software wouldn't necessarily see what was missing until you went in and tried to kick it around. So for me, when I'm reviewing software, I really want to get in and play with it. When you get to that point and you start talking to the company about the ability to use the product directly, one of the things that some of them will tell you is, well, we don't have a trial for you to do before you purchase, but you have 30 days and you can get your full refund within 30 days if you find it's not suitable. Well, back to the ease or difficulty of setting these guys up. You don't want to invest time bringing in all your patient data only to discover, oh, this isn't so right for me. You know, you want to invest time in something you feel confident is going to work for you. All right, so back to this slide and more about scheduling. So what do you need to have room for? You want to make sure if you have multiple practitioners that they can be handled. If you're running more than one room, can you select the room that's going to be used? Very, very important, I think, is notifications and confirmations and confirmations and reminders. Reminders is covered there in that slide. So these are messages that go to the client or the patient to either confirm their appointment, and the confirmation you ideally want to link to not only confirm their appointment, but to the forms, the health history form, the informed consent that you want them to fill out before they come in. And of course, once that's filled out, it's going to populate in your system. So you'll be able to review that health history before you even meet the patient. The notifications, you want to be able to figure out, of course, that's going to tell your patient just a reminder, hey, you have an appointment coming up with Dr. Smith, tomorrow at 3:30. You want to be able to choose what your patient wants. Do they want that by text, by email, by phone? I'm going to say most often, in my experience, people want these notifications by text at this point in time. And you want to be able to choose what works best for your patients as a whole. I want to set it and say, send a text, and I don't want to have to go in every single time and select that individually. So that's some of the things that I think are top of mind in terms of scheduling. Can we have the next slide, Joey? In terms of charting, so patient forms, and that's a typo, I apologize. It should be patient forms and practitioner charting. By that, I mean the forms that the patient's going to fill out, as well as the intake that you are going to chart when the patient comes in. So all of these will have some intake form or health history that the patient's going to fill out in advance. Some of them will have, the Jane app, for instance, has, they have a community, a Jane community, I'll call it for lack of a better term, and it's organized by practitioner type. And you can go in and see what other acupuncturists have created and use those forms. There isn't a default already that's in place. You need to go in and select one. Others provide you a default, and then you can customize from that point. This is true both of the patient's health history form as well as your practitioner's intake form. So we want to consider, how do we update those and look at, is it drag and drop technology? Can I bring a new box in? How do I save it? How easy is this to do? Some of them you click and select, and usually after you select, you can drag it. And you want to have some flexibility in terms of what you provide for responses, particularly with the patient intake. Can I select a check the box versus a free form where patients can type in? And how easy or difficult is it for me to build this? Some of us have some familiarity with these types of building these types of forms, and others have none. And so let's find what your comfort zone is and make sure that you've got what you need. Okay. Joey, can we have the next slide, please? So insurance billing. Many of these will be integrated, they'll say, so you'll need to have access to these products separately. They'll be integrated with clearinghouses like Availity or Office Ally, let's say. So in that case, maybe it will set you up if you're one who does your own billing. That will be great. You can port right over. You may also, or you may prefer to have your insurance biller continue to do your billing. And then when we get to pricing, you want to consider the administrative accounts, or what are the extra fees, if there are extra fees, to give access to your biller. Is there a portal that makes this communication easy for you? Can this be set up, and most can, as an admin account? So the insurance biller, as well as your front desk receptionist, can access what they need. The biller can access the insurance information, the front desk can access scheduling, but they don't see the patient chart. You want to make sure that this is linked to a database of ICD codes, currently ICD-10. And so when you put in your diagnosis, the system will automatically go and look for the appropriate code for you. And then for insurance, as you probably know, we bill in 15-minute increments. So some of these will have time-based point prescriptions, and that's helpful for anyone who's submitting this to insurance, to health insurance for reimbursement. Next slide, Joey, please. So references and reporting. This is a I've put it on one slide, but it's a good amount of what you want to be concerned about. A few of these, many of these will have resources that they say, you know, you have a full database of herbal information, or you have access to a compilation of acupuncture points and their functions. You want to know what the source for those are. They may or may not be one that you're familiar with. And while I'm sure they're all solid in their content, if it uses wording that's unfamiliar to you, it might not be as valuable as if it's one that you are familiar with or that you currently use. So the references might include things like a guide to single herbs that you can look up, a guide to traditional formulas. So when you want to write a formula and have it submitted to your herbal pharmacy, you can pre-populate with a traditional formula and its traditional dosing and make any modifications that you might want to make to the formula from there. It would be great if you could do that and then have it go directly into the patient's chart or into your herbal pharmacy. Some of them will have a symptoms directory. Many of us don't typically use these, but particularly for new practitioners, that's a nice help where you can look up constipation and have a list of possible patterns that would cause constipation and click on each one and find a possible treatment. And then generally professionals' guidance. So by this, I mean professionals providing guidance to you. So when you're looking at who these sources are, you want to see, for instance, if you link to within the TCM Suite site, you can link into the products that they provide. So guidance, for instance, on dermatology from Mazen Al-Kafaji, which is invaluable in my opinion. I've studied with Mazen and taken his diploma course, and it's fascinating. And lastly, I want to talk a little bit about reporting. So we talked a little bit about inventory. You can also, in many of these, manage your patient experiences. So let's say you want to integrate with your email marketing and you want to send a message to everyone who hasn't been in your clinic for the past 6 months. So in some of these, you can pull that list. You can integrate, let's say, with Constant Contact, and you can send a message saying, I haven't seen you in a little while. I hope that in these interesting and transformational times we're in that you've been staying safe and healthy. Please do check in if there's anything I can do to be of help, right? So it's another way, a good way to prompt, to allow you to stay in touch with your patients and to allow them or remind them that they may want to be in touch with you. So now we're going to move on and talk about pricing. Can we have the next slide, Joey, please? So remember, when you think about pricing, that you want to consider what's compatible or integrated versus included, and look at add-ons. In most cases, you're going to have these products will be able to handle credit card processing. So you want to see what systems they're using, if that's important to you. You also want to see, maybe you want to use their system, but you want to know what the charges are. So there's typically a charge per transaction plus a percentage of the dollar value. Several of these will say they do insurance verifications or have the ability to submit insurance claims online. And there are typically additional charges to do that, sometimes per submission, sometimes a larger, a more advanced, a more robust package that you need to invest in order to have that functionality. Can we have the next slide, Joey? So we're going to look at a couple of the pricing models for the products I mentioned. We're going to JNAP, Unified Practice, AccuSimple, and TCM Suite. And we'll talk about each one, and you can, the slide will be up for a while, so you can take a look at it. The JNAP, we see, offers three levels. They have what they call the basic plan, the insurance plan is the mid-tier, and the corporate plan. They also offer a feature or pricing feature that's interesting. They consider a full-time practitioner to be more than 24 hours a week. So if you have several people working for you who work less than 24 hours a week, then you don't have to pay for an additional full-time practitioner on your license. They also have on their website the ability, they have a calculator where you can put in how many practitioners you have and how many hours each one works, and they will estimate for you which plan would be best and what your cost would be. So that's helpful to save you some arithmetic. So the base plan, so each of these, the way it's laid out here, the base plan lists what's included there. The insurance plan includes everything in basic, plus what's listed under insurance plan is in addition to. And then what's listed under corporate is in addition to what's in the insurance plan. So you get basic charting and scheduling for their basic plan. You can process credit cards, but remember there are fees for being able to process the credit cards, and you want to compare prices with other sources and see if having the ease of having the transaction go through your app and be captured for accounting purposes is an added value for you. So when you move on to the insurance plan, I like the name for this because it tells you just exactly why you would consider doing that. If I am billing health insurance companies, then I want to be able to easily populate my CPD and ICD code, CPT rather, and ICD codes, generate super bills to give to patients where needed. I want to be able to track payments, right? I want to be able to either my staff or have my biller have easy access to what's been submitted versus what's been paid. So you see that this one is integrated with several insurance clearinghouses in the United States, Office Ally and Availity, for instance. Jane App is developed in Canada, and it was developed by practitioners who wanted to run multidisciplinary practices. So it is used very extensively by acupuncturists, but also appropriate for, say, chiropractors or massage therapists, etc. Some of these will, with authority, say we were developed by acupuncturists for acupuncturists, which is great. Jane was not developed in that way, and if you have a multidisciplinary practice, it might be an advantage for you to work with them. And then lastly, their corporate plan is much more robust. You can see you've got a bigger clinic here, right? You've got everything in insurance, plus this includes 10 user licenses. And you've got your own dedicated team member to help you get set up and onboard your staff who's going to be using Jane. This is for a larger practice, obviously. So that's what we have to say about the Jane app. The next one that we want to talk about, Joey, can we have the next slide, please? Is Unified Practice. Unified Practice has been very popular over the years with new practitioners. I've heard a little bit of complaining about it lately, but it's not firsthand, so I'm not sure if that was just someone who was disgruntled. Unified Practice has a lot of, when you use Unified Practice, there's a lot of radio buttons. You can select your points by clicking with a radio button rather than typing if you want to, for instance. You can also simply type. Me, I prefer to type, looking for the radio button. It's too easy to click the wrong one, and I find for me, I'm faster if I just type. For other people who like the point and click kind of mentality, it's sort of the people who click versus use the keyboard strokes. I like keyboard strokes. So see, you can use whichever one works for you. Interesting to me about Unified Practice is, I'm pointing with my pointer and you can't see it. If you look at the bottom left column on the starter plan, and this is also true for the premium plan, it includes unlimited email notifications, meaning to your patient, and 50 SMS or 50 text reminders are included with Unified Practice. So if you have more than 50 reminders going out per month, which would mean either you have more than 50 patients per month, which is easy to do, or maybe you have a series of 2 reminders set up per patient, then you'd only have 25 patients being reminded. Then you have an additional fee per text that wouldn't be included. So look out for those kinds of little things. So here you can do scheduling, basic charting. In the basic plan, you have ability to create super bills. So you can give a receipt to your patient to submit for insurance reimbursement if that's the case. Some level of financial reporting, but that gets more robust as you go on. Again, you get credit card processing with their system. So United Pay is Unified Practice's credit card processing system. So you'd want to know what the extra fees are. Typically with credit cards, it's included in the capabilities included in the plan, but you'll pay a price per swipe plus a percentage of the amount. The reference library here is sources that we know from Nigel Wiseman and from Paradigm Publishing. And then when you move up to the premium, we'll also note the cost per additional practitioner. So The premium and the starter plan are each assuming one practitioner. If you want to add additional practitioners, that's an additional $25 a month for the basic plan and $30 a month if you have the more advanced plan. So you see, we said that we got financial reporting with the starter plan with the basic, but when you look at premium, you get advanced reporting. So you want to know exactly, what reporting am I getting and not getting? And how important is reporting to you? If it's not important, then maybe the starter plan is going to be perfectly fine for you. Your reference library gets a little bit fatter with your premium. You have integration with Constant Contact for email marketing. Now just remember the pricing. Bear in mind that's integrated with Constant Contact. So if you're already using Constant Contact, that's a bonus. If you're not already using it and you want to start using it, it's an additional fee, which is not a huge monthly fee, but it's an extra $30 a month. And you want to make sure that you're keeping track of all these add-ons. So you are not saying, oh, great, I have this $59 a month plan, and then find out you have to add another $50 a month in order to get it where you want it to be, or to use it in the way that you want to use it. Here in this next plan, you see the jump up for insurance is that you are able to track, right? You're able to produce super bills with the basic, but you're able to submit and track insurance payments with the premium. The enhanced is the one in the middle, and that's the one I think that most people actually use. And it lacks some of the more robust insurance billing capabilities. Joey, can we have the next slide, please? AccuSimple. AccuSimple is simple. Over the years, admittedly, I'll tell you my two favorites as I'm doing this are AccuSimple and TCM Suite. And that's personal preference. It's not an endorsement. So AccuSimple I like because it is more simple. Both AccuSimple and Unified Practice are integrated with a service called FullScript, where you can order supplements through this online service. Another thing I like about AccuSimple that's true of AccuSimple and TCM Suite and not true of the others is if you want to start out with using scheduling and not make a big investment, you can do it. If you're someone who's just getting started and you say, you know what, let me set up my calendar and start doing a little bit and get my patients accustomed to booking online, with AccuSimple for $20 a month, you have access to their scheduling system, right? So their scheduling system gives you not only the calendar scheduling, but the reminders and the ability to customize emails that go out on schedule, which I think is a really nice way if you want to start slowly that you can start. And then their basic package is $49.99 a month. And here you add charting, the patient documents, meaning the health history form, and the ability to customize these forms. A patient portal, so you can communicate inside the EHR and have everything remain HIPAA compliant. Let's see what else we want to talk about with this one. The ability to have online patient reviews, so you can send out a message asking patients after their appointment, we hope you had a good experience today, and give them a link, or they can voluntarily go into the patient portal and leave a review for you. What I don't recall about that, I prefer if a patient's leaving, or if anyone's leaving anything on my website, on my patient-facing website, I want the ability to approve what gets seen and what doesn't get seen. And so I'd want to make sure that those patient reviews, that I can make them visible or not. And sometimes they're patient reviews. I don't want to advocate for hiding a bad review, but I think we all can say I've had reviews on my Facebook page from people I've never met. So if you have that, or if you have somebody who's just typing in information that has nothing to do with your practice, you want to disallow that from being published on your site. This one allows packages. So if you use a lot of prepaid packages, you can use AccuSimple for that. Financial reporting. This is pretty robust at their basic level. In the next level, the plus, you can add group emails. You can complete this CMS 1500s, as I'm sure we all know, are the forms that need to be filled out for health insurance companies and create super bills. And if you go up to the highest tab, you can do electronic submission of all of those insurance claims, get insurance, verify insurance eligibility, etc. And then their fine print I've put on the bottom for you. Joey, can we have the next slide, please? And lastly, TCM Suite. And TCM Suite, I took all of this pricing information directly from each one of these companies' websites, so you can go back and see what's there firsthand if you want to. And so TCM Suite doesn't spend time listing out all of their features, so I'll try to summarize here for you. What I love about this is they are doing this to give back to the community. As a user who spends $25 or more within Kamwo's eScript each month, you have complimentary access to TCM Suite. TCM Suite will provide you with full scheduling patient reminders. It will give you, it provides to you default forms, both for your patient intake, your health history, and you can, or you can customize those as you like. So if you like components of it, but you want to add, not use one of their sections and create your own instead, you can very easily do that. Just check a box and say, don't show this, and instead create something new, and then have that shown as a substitute or in addition to. You can very easily create your schedule. So getting started in all of these, it's the same as some of these others where you go in and introduce each of your services that you offer, let the system know how long to book for that service, and you can click whether or not you want that to be able to be booked online. If you've got some special service that you want a patient to call rather than schedule online, you can opt out of having that available through online scheduling. One of the things I like an awful lot, and that prompted me to get started with TCM Suite, is Kamwo will bring all of your existing patient information from eScript into TCM Suite. And so the idea of inputting patient data for any patient that you've submitted an herbal prescription to Kamwo for is automatically populated. So a good percentage, at least for me, a good percentage of my patient information was immediately brought into my system and there for me to use right from the start. Functionality is similar. I can create pre-populated text, macros for longer text. There is a link not only to, so your patient information can be brought in from eScript, and when you want to prescribe herbs for a patient, you can do this immediately within the EMR. So if I click on within my intake form under treatment, if I click on the herbal prescription, it will port me immediately over to eScript, which I use all the time anyway, and capture that data so that it's within the patient's chart. And all of the messaging that goes out to the patient typically and goes out to me is also populated. I think I've covered everything. I know I haven't covered everything, but I think I've covered the high points for this system. In terms of pricing, of course, it's of no charge, as long as you're using $25 a month in eScript. And again, I think most of us are. So for that reason, it's ahead. One of the things that I know they're considering and they're offering in the future is a patient portal. So one of the things it doesn't have is an encrypted ability to communicate with the patient. It does have the ability to process credit cards. It does have the ability to work directly with, to do insurance billing through a biller, so a portal to work with your insurance billers. It does not charge anything extra for the, it does not charge anything extra for the ability to have administrative accounts for your front desk or for your biller. So those are some of just the high points that caused me to move over to TCM Suite when I did. Joey, can we have the next slide, please? I think I skipped a slide. Yeah, can we have the next slide after this? Yeah, those two are in the wrong order, so I'm going to ask you to go backward, Joey, in just a minute. So things I think to consider first and foremost, how quickly do you want to get up and running? For me, one of those considerations was, well, if I go with TCM Suite, I know that the good staff at Kamwo is going to bring all my patient data in, and that gives me a quick start that I really appreciated. What features are most important? For me, I wanted charting. I'm not that concerned about inventory. I wanted the ability to chart. The online scheduling was really important. Receipts and money management was important, and I had all of that where I needed it. I don't have the patient portal. I still have to communicate with my patients elsewhere, but there's the possibility that that's going to get built in the future, and the pros outweighed the con of not having that for me. So as you're considering these things to think about, remember when you're thinking about pricing, compatible with or integrated with versus included. If it's compatible or integrated with a product that you're not currently using, then that's an additional expense you're going to have. Remember add-on costs. So yes, you can handle insurance billing and insurance submission, and you can handle credit card pricing, but there's typically an additional fee for each transaction there. So just make sure you know what that transaction is so that you don't have an unexpectedly high bill at the end of signing on with your particular service provider. And in the end, I think it's important that you feel like you're a partner with your EMR provider, that you're not their customer, but rather if you have something to say or a feature that you would like to see added or tweaked in any way, or if you need any assistance in getting started, that you have turnaround time and attention that is suitable for you. Joey, can we go backward now? Okay, thank you. All right. So I thank you for spending time here. Again, I thank Kamwo for hosting us. I thank Donna for being our MC. And I hope this has been helpful in terms of how to get started and what to consider. And I know it's a large task, and looking at every one of these individually is beyond the scope of the time that we have here. But hopefully this has given you a something to get started with. Donna, if there's questions, I guess we can move on to those.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. So we can take the slides down, right, Joey? And then we can maybe, there's a couple of questions. Let me just read the ones on the chat, and then Amanda, I think you can give your voice to your questions. Maribel had asked, are all EMR plans presented HIPAA compliant?
The ones that have patient communication are HIPAA compliant.
Okay, great. And then earlier, William had a question about scanning. Hang on a second, it's in here somewhere. Right, did I see that right? Am I just remembering wrong?
Maybe he could give voice.
No, that was right. The question is can I handwrite a letter? Can I handwrite my records and then scan them in, and then they're EMR compliant?
Can you handwrite there are some of these that have the ability to handwrite, and I skipped over this. Thank you for bringing it up. And in terms of charting, for instance, to draw the tongue, you would need to have the right hardware to do that. So you need to have a tablet that you can draw on. In terms of scanning and uploading, you can in all of these attached files. So let's say you had historical charts that you wanted to scan and make part of a patient's record. You could scan them and attach them, upload them to that patient's file. Is that what you were asking?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know of any that have transcription software. In other words, that you speak and your voice is turned to text. There are some other more biomedically focused systems that do that, but I don't think, I may be wrong, but I don't think that any of these have that capability.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Joey, you're still casting. Oh, there you go. You uncasted your screen. And then Amanda, you've got a couple of questions.
Yeah, so I just had one of my questions is for TCM Suite. You mentioned communication. So as of now, we can't like digital patient information or intakes, we can't send that to the patient, and they can't upload that to TCM Suite in any way.
The patient can fill out, in TCM Suite, the patient can fill out the health history form for you. They can fill out your informed consent online, and that will all be inside the system. They can fill out your HIPAA form, but you don't have sort of email capability going back and forth. Does that make sense?
Okay, so they would be able to upload that information back into TCM Suite themselves?
Yes, it's not a matter of uploading it so much as it is entering it directly into. So let's say I schedule an appointment with you, Amanda, right?
Mm-hmm.
You will send me, I will get a confirmation email from you or text, whatever I've requested. And in that email, there's going to be a link that says, please fill out these forms. And you're going to open those forms. They'll open for the patient within TCM Suite. The patient will fill them out and they'll be part of that private patient record.
Okay, great. And then last question is, do we need to ask the patient's permission for doing electronic records? Because I had one patient who didn't want to do that.
Legally, no, you don't have
You
to
don't
ask.
have to ask them. Okay.
You have the same requirement to honor their privacy via HIPAA. And
Okay.
so you want to use a system that you know is HIPAA compliant.
Okay.
The
So we,
patients themselves may just feel like, oh my God, it's electronic. It can
yeah,
get, yeah.
that's what
And
we,
and I guess that, I wouldn't say this way to the patient, but anything can get hacked. But we take steps to encrypt information so that it doesn't get hacked. And so yeah,
okay. Thank you.
you're welcome.
All right, is that any other questions? Okay, we gotta go ahead. Got two hand raises. We got Dina and Wanda. So Dina, you want to go first?
Sure, thank you. My question is like one of my biggest fears of moving to electronic records is like, what if the company goes out of business? And then secondly, if for any reason the system's down, does anybody ever say, like I've heard people say systems are down sometimes or there's problems but I don't know, I've never, I don't use.
Yeah.
So those are my two biggest questions.
Well, the first one is if the company goes out of business. That was, one of the things I voiced. I didn't say goes out of business, but what if your small company gets bought up by a bigger company and the bigger company isn't that concerned about the system, about your small company's system? So similarly, that small company, because it's small, could go out of business. So the ones we're talking about here are really solid. I talked with Tom Leung about my fear that Tom, I've been waiting so long because I think that these little companies are going to get gobbled up by somebody like Dr. Chrono, for instance. And, it's my own paranoia. And he said, well, Kamwo is not going anywhere. We're about TCM and supporting this community. And, why would we sell out? This is our goal, is to support you. And that just rung true with me. It really resonated with me. And I thought, I love that. I like the fact that I'm already doing business with and consider Kamwo a trusted partner, and using TCM Suite made me comfortable with that. And it is a good consideration. Small businesses can go out of business. The ones that we're talking about here have been in business for a long time. Jane and Unified Practice are newer and have been on a steady trajectory. AccuSimple was developed, I want to say, in the early 2010-ish. And it was very, very overly simple for a long time. And in the past years, they've done a lot of new enhancements and development and really beefed it up. And so I think that's a worthy consideration. And you should consider, when you're picking an EMR, how long have they been in business and what's their commitment to this marketplace.
Right. I mean, I would think there would be some sort of legal commitment they would have to make, holding all those medical records for all the practitioners. That's what I think in my head, but I just,
Yeah, you should be able, if a company's going under and they're a respectable company, they should notify their customers and provide to you a way to get your patient records out. And I think also, ideally, they should offer to port your information over to a new system, or maybe partner with a new system and say, okay, we're going to, for instance, my dog's vet went out of business a couple of years back, and they said, we're going to take all of our patients' records and give them to this other veterinary practice. And if you want to use them, great. And if you don't, contact them and they'll move them to somewhere new.
Okay. And then the part 2 to my question was, are these systems ever down, like AccuSimple or TCM Suite? Like, have you ever experienced either one of the systems being down when, no, okay. All right.
I don't know of any being down, but you also remember you want to ask about the redundancies when you talk about hosting and security. Before you use one, you can ask the company where, who do you use for hosting, and is there a system for a backup?
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Dina. Thank you.
Dina, while we have your attention, can you post your email in the chat? Same with Nem and Madeline.
Sure.
Thanks
sure.
so much. And Wanda, I think you've got a question.
Yes, I was wondering, Ken, with the TCM Suite, are you able to interface another calendar system within the charting system of TCM Suite?
It can it communicates with Google Calendar.
Okay.
Can I just say aloha because I like to say it?
Aloha. It's a beautiful day in Hawaii.
Oh, yay.
Yeah. And so with the hosting, and can Tom come in and say anything about this? Like with the hosting and security of TCM Suite, what is it interfaced with? And then why wouldn't everybody just use TCM Suite? It just seems like we should all be using it. I don't know.
Well, there's some, Tom, you may want to jump in, or Joey, about security. But there's some things that TCM Suite doesn't currently offer. There's some bells and whistles that the others have. And if you want those bells and whistles, then you should go there and they'd be willing to pay for them. But if you want to go get started, and I haven't, I don't have a system currently, I was really moved by this offering and thought it would benefit me.